Judaism's history begins around 2000 BCE with the covenant between God, Elohim, and Abraham. Over 1,000 years later, as the Jewish faithful believe, God's, Elohim's, laws and commandments were revealed to Prophet Moses on Mount Sinai, forming the Torah, which is the first part of the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, and the ancient writings of the Talmud embody the beliefs and practices of Judaism. Present in every aspect of the religion is a single, omniscient, and compassionate God, Elohim. The Holy Tanakh's Book of Samuel is the third book in the Nevi'im, prophets, and the second section of the Holy Tanakh. Filled with succinct messages through the depicted stories, the Book of Samuel is dedicated to giving the right directions for those who seek their way to God. We will now continue with the selection of chapters 18 and 24 from the Book of Samuel in the Holy Tanakh. The story told here, which includes King Saul and the future king of Israel, King David, is a story of how, when blessed with God's presence, the soul is always protected in the strength of benevolence and virtues. And David went out. Wherever Saul would send him, he would succeed. Accordingly, Saul appointed him over the soldiers, and he was pleasing in the eyes of all the people, and also in the eyes of Saul's servants. And it was when David returned from conquering the Philistine, native people of ancient Philistia, that the women came out of all the cities of Israel to sing, and with musical instruments in their hands, toward King Saul, with drums, with joy, and with cymbals. And the cheering women sang out and said, Saul has conquered his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very chagrined, and the matter displeased him, and he said, They ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they ascribed the thousands. And what more can he have but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day on. And it was on the morrow that the evil spirit rested upon Saul, and he raved in the midst of the house. And David was playing with his hand like every day, and the spear was in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the spear and said, I shall pin David to the wall. And David turned from before him twice. And Saul feared David, for the Lord was with him, while he had turned away from Saul. And Saul removed him from being with him, and made him for himself a captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David was successful in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. And Saul saw that he was very successful, and he feared him. And Saul said to David, Behold, my elder daughter Merab, I shall give her to you as a wife. But be a warrior for me, and wage the wars of the Lord. For Saul said, Let not my hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. And David said to Saul, Who am I, and what is my life, or my father's family in Israel, that I should be a son-in-law to the king? And it was at the time that Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David that she was given to Adriel, the Meolathite, as a wife. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. And Saul said, I shall give her to him, and she will be a snare to him, and the hand of the Philistines will be upon him. And Saul said to David, with one of two shall you be my son-in-law today. And Saul commanded his servants, speak to David secretly, saying, behold, the king desires you, and all his servants love you. And now become the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servants spoke these words in David's ears. And David said, does becoming the king's son-in-law seem to you to be a light thing? For I am poor and lightly esteemed. And Saul's servants told him, saying, according to these words has David spoken. And Saul said, so shall you say to David, the king has no desire in a dowry, but to avenge himself upon the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And his servants told David these words, and the thing pleased David to become the king's son-in-law. And the days had not expired. And the king gave him Michal, his daughter, as a wife. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul grew still more afraid of David, and Saul was hostile to David all the days. Chapter 24. And David went up from there, and he stayed in the strongholds of En-Gedi, nature reserve in Israel. And it was when Saul had returned from following the Philistines that they told him, saying, David is in the desert of En-Gedi, nature reserve in Israel. And Saul took 3,000 picked men from all Israel, and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. And he came to the sheepcotes on the way, and there was a cave, and Saul went in to cover his feet, while David and his men were staying at the end of the cave. And David's men said to him, Behold the day concerning which the Lord said to you, Behold, I shall deliver your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it will seem good in your eyes. And David arose, and secretly severed the skirt of Saul's coat. And it was afterwards that David's heart smote him, for he had severed Saul's skirt. And he said to his men, The Lord forbid it for me that I should do this thing to my Lord, to the Lord's anointed, to stretch forth my hand upon him, for he is the Lord's anointed. And David stayed his men with these words, and did not allow them to rise up against Saul. And Saul arose from the cave and went on his way. And David arose afterwards, and emerged from the cave after Saul, saying, My lord the king. And Saul looked behind him, and David bowed with his face to the ground, and prostrated himself. And David said to Saul, "Why should you listen to the words of a man, saying, 'Behold, David seeks your harm'? Behold, this day your eyes have seen how the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and one said to kill you. But my soul had pity on you, and I said, I shall not stretch forth my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. And Father, see the skirt of your coat in my hand, for in that I severed the skirt of your coat, and I did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor transgression in my hand, and I have not sinned against you, but you are stalking my soul to take it. May the Lord judge between me and you, and may the Lord avenge me of you, but my hand shall not be upon you. As says the proverb of the ancient one, from the wicked comes forth wickedness, and my hand shall not be upon you. After whom has the King of Israel come forth? Whom are you pursuing? A dead dog? A single flea? And the Lord shall become a judge, and he shall judge between me and you, and he shall see and plead my cause, and exact justice for me from your hand. And it was when David finished speaking these words to Saul that Saul said, Is this your voice, my son David? And Saul raised his voice and wept. And he said to David, You are more righteous than I, for you have repaid me with goodness, while I have repaid you with evil. And you have shown today how you have dealt well with me, how the Lord delivered me into your hand, and you did not kill me. For when a man finds his enemy, does he send him away safely? And may the Lord repay you with goodness for what you have done to me on this day. And now, behold, I know that you will reign, and the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hand. And now swear to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my seed, and you will not destroy my name from my father's house. And David swore to Saul, and Saul went to his home, and David and his men went up to the stronghold. And Samuel died, and all Israel gathered and lamented him, and they buried him in his house in Ramah. And David arose and went down to the desert of Paran. Righteous viewers, we thank you for your company for today's program, Obedience and Righteousness Before the Lord. Selection from the Holy Tanakh's Book of Samuel, Part 2 of 2, on Words of Wisdom.